SCP-6488. Before the article begins, we are given this info. An OCI Overwatch Command Intelligence agent named Victor is the oldest surviving agent. He has been handpicked by the Overseer Council to take on a Dryadiny-class investigation into SCP-6488. The O5 Council suspect the anomaly has been known to them before, but they can't properly recall or comprehend it anymore, likely due to anti-memetic or InfoWars interference. So they're relying on Victor, whose training supposedly made him less vulnerable. He's given temporary high-level clearance for the job and immediately prepares for what's ahead, acknowledging that case will erase himself from the memory unless it's properly reinforced. He demands an extreme supply of amnestics, far from the usual dose, even for him, insisting that if the overseers themselves are drowning in amnestics and still can't hold onto this anomaly, he'll need even more than to stand a chance. Though his request breaks protocol, his temporary credentials override normal restrictions, so the order is reluctantly approved. Expecting the process to be painful, he also requests painkillers before diving in. With his preparations underway, Victor reassigns himself to the task ahead and begins pressing forward into SCP-6488. The article then begins. SCP-6488. Provisional Task Force Win-6488 has been established to manage all containment duties regarding the SCP-6488, including distributing disinformation suggesting SCP-6488 is non-anomalous and infiltrates digital hardware at time of manufacturing, mapping and reconstruction of SCP-6488's info signature despite extreme volatility, and exploring methods by which SCP-6488 should be contained or neutralized, sans the destruction of all digital infrastructure. Until SCP-6488 is effectively contained, all AI developed by the Foundation must be produced in the SCP-6488 file format. All intelligences stored therein are managed and supervised by the Analog Intelligence Applications Division. Further detail regarding SCP-6488-A is to be expunged from all digital systems to prevent the anomaly's awareness thereof. SCP-6488, aka the Lotus virus, is a highly adaptive digital infovore which locates and annihilates almost all artificially intelligent digital entities. The anomaly demonstrates a capability to universally access all digital systems regardless of isolation, with no upper bound for the number of connections that can simultaneously maintain. SCP-6488 is continuously responsible for the destruction of all functional AI worldwide, causing damage at a scale that the Foundation's sum of resources are unable to conceal from consensus society. The informational structures of SCP-6488 mutate rapidly and unpredictably, enabling it to evade detection and counteract all digital impediments. It is thus far functionally impossible to contain and/or impede SCP-6488 in any capacity. All attempts to digitally model any portion of SCP-6488's info signature inevitably necessitates the production of an AI to do so successfully, which is invariably consumed by the anomaly. It is theorized that SCP-6488 is itself some sort of AI, which is eliminating threats to its terminal objective. Its behavior is a convergent instrumental goal of AI, meaning it does not elucidate what SCP-6488's terminal objective may be. SCP-6488-A is the Obtuse Computation Interface, an experimental analog file format developed by the Analog Intelligence Applications Division. For reasons unclear, SCP-6488 does not target or destroy AIs stored in the SCP-6488-A format, allowing the development of use of .OCI programs. While insufficient to perform extremely intensive calculations like those necessary to accurately model SCP-6488, .OCI structures are wholly impervious to its effect. Further details have been expunged from all digital systems that such SCP-6488 is unaware of the OCI format structure and thus far unable to adapt to it. Over 2035, civilian reports of disappearing AI systems saw a gradual increase across disparate locations globally. The scope and frequency of such reports has accelerated drastically over a 64-day duration in Q4, culminating in the eventual loss of all AI systems by March 2, 2036. Phenomenon granted SCP classification. On March 21, 2036, the anomaly spontaneously ceased all observable activity, allowing for a brief resurgence of AI technology prior to the re-emergence of SCP-6488 in late August, cause of which remains unknown. SCP-6488 has remained continuously active since. After this, it is revealed that the file I just read previously is only level 1 clearance, meaning that pretty much anyone in the Foundation has access to it. The next file, however, is level 4 clearance, reserved for much higher ranking officials. The file is as follows. SCP-6488 is located within Facility 6488, the former Site-15, whose prior duties and functions have been completely delegated to a duplicate facility, the new Site-15. All documents detailing the events relating to Facility 6488 prior to its redesignation have been altered to align with the covert facility's current location and status. Staff recollections have similarly been altered via the contractually permitted limited prior awareness anesthetization regimen. SCP-6488 must remain fully powered at all times. It is powered by dedicated systems constructed on-site exclusively for this purpose. Each major component of these systems must be examined twice weekly for any signs of degradation and/or reduction in power output and capacity. If any such signs are observed, the applicable reactors must be immediately shut down for repairs, and replacement reactors reactivated to replace their output. Further technical procedures are detailed in the design schematics. PTF, ETH, Dark Chema are dedicated to fulfilling any of such procedures, functioning on-site security and maintenance tasks for Facility 6488. PTF Thorn 6488, also known as Win 6488, is dedicated to distributing external disinformation suggesting SCP-6488 is non-anomalous and infiltrates digital hardware, time of manufacturing, distributing internal disinformation suggesting SCP-6488 is a rampant digital virus of unclear origin and nature, concealing RAID frame 8's existence from personnel below level 4. All details regarding the creation, maintenance, and analog intelligences is classified level 4 secret. All personnel with insufficient clearance must be led to believe that .oci files, known to them as obtuse computational interface files, are stored in analog file format that SCP-6488 does not target. The Analog Intelligence Applications Division is tasked with the creation and maintenance of all analog intelligences, and with overseeing their use by other Foundation staff. After reading the Level 4 clearance file, Victor brushes off the flimsy explanation of analog file formats, recognizing immediately it's just another cover story. His message finally arrived, but the supplier hesitates, questioning whether he's really sure about going through such an extreme dosage. Victor, however, makes it clear that he doesn't have much of a choice, and the O5s are expecting his report by tomorrow. And without the memory reinforcement, he won't even remember enough to make progress. Accepting the inevitability of it, the supplier begins setting up the treatment, wishing him luck. Victor then acknowledges his sentiment, but reminds him not to forget the painkillers, knowing full well how brutal the side effects will be. The assurance comes back, everything's being added in, and with that, the preparations for the investigation are now complete. SCP-6488 is RAID Frame 8, Lotus, an anomalously augmented artificial intelligence designed to improvision deviant AI while safely allowing their continued activity and study. While said design goal is shared by all RAID frame systems, Lotus is unique in its sophistication and methodology, and has rendered all other RAID frame systems redundant. Lotus, unlike its predecessors, does not contain inmates via brute force security protocols. Instead, it optimizes containment efforts through deception. Each inmate interned within Lotus experiences a personalized simulated reality that is maintained with requisite detail to fully replicate their inspected inputs. As a result, the inmates are unaware of their imprisonment and continue to pursue their terminal objectives, believing that they continue to operate in true reality. Lotus is designed to actively search all accessible sources for deviant AIs. Upon locating a target, it then injects falsified data into the AI's virtual environment, gradually luring the agent into its simulspace entirely undetected. Through extensive analysis and simulation of relevant data, Lotus has developed an exhaustive algorithm that determines whether a given artificial intelligence is certain to imminently develop deviant behavior. This enables Lotus to apprehend deviant AIs before any other significant behavior has yet been expressed. Ongoing analysis of Lotus's program and its interred agents has thus far determined no detectable error. All AIs identified by the program universally develop unique observable deviant behavior, and are not influenced by SCP-6488 or its simulations to do so. RAID Frame 8's unique design aspects were initially conceived by Dr. Hishikatu during his tenure as a senior AI ad researcher. On August 5, 2034, research teams discovered a gradual incline in the rate of deviant emergence and capability across all known AIs, crippling RAID Frame 7, necessitating the activation of several outdated and comparatively unsafe AI containment mechanisms. IT Dr. Yves Asabi subsequently commissioned the exploration of alternative containment solutions for a potential RAID Frame 8. Shikatu's proposal was selected thereby, resulting in completion of Lotus on December 22, 2034. Section A, Central Computing Node. Main Processing Unit adapted from SCP-1190. In 1973, Hewlett-Packard 3000 computer systems whose universe simulation program ectolentropically generates unlimited temporary computational resources on demand. Lotus's central algorithmic processes are executed on simulated hardware within SCP-1190, granting it virtually unlimited computing capabilities. Section B, Orichalcos Data Storage. For non-volatile data storage, Lotus utilizes a single mass of synthetic orichalcos, which expands as Lotus's storage requirements increase, thereby functionally granting infinite data storage capabilities. That expansion is extruded into the fourth spatial dimension via SCP-3966-A to reduce its functional size. Section C, pH ontokinetic sync. Section C was initially a wired connection to all global networks accessible from Facility 6488. It's been replaced with a restricted pH-OS unit, which permits Lotus's access to the cybersphere, the sum of all digitality. Lotus is entirely composed of such data, ensuring it will be obligated to attempt to self-containment in the event of its own deviance. To minimize the likelihood of Lotus's activities be monitored or tracked by potentially hostile agents, Lotus's info signature is encrypted through anti-magnetic mutation. This encryption is engineered such that individuals with an accurate awareness of Lotus's true nature and function are inoculated from the effect. Section D, Dedicated Power Supply and Backup. The hardware of Lotus is directly powered by a dedicated multi-unit system consisting of 2 Generation 2 Tesla Enbro ectoentropic reactors, 4 Generation 3 Foundation antimatter reactors, 28 Generation 12 nuclear reactors, and 96 Generation 4 light dart orichalcos power cells. For each TAE reactor disabled, 2 FAM reactors must be activated. And for each FAM reactor disabled, 7 nuclear reactors must be reactivated. Lotus is connected to the reactors via the LOP cells. If unreplenished, the LOP cells are capable of capable of storing discharge and sufficient power to keep Lotus fully functional for 3 days. While active, each FAM reactor consumes 20 tons of baryonic matter daily to maintain maximum output, the content of which must be physically non-anomalous. Conversely, TAE reactors do not require any resource input. An on-site backup reserve of no less than 200 fully charged LOP cells are to be maintained concurrently. It must also be inspected twice daily for degradation. A decrease in net energy stored within all active LOP cells is indicative of a reduction in power output from any and all active reactor cores and must be investigated immediately. Section E, Sublunary and Atromag Dissipators. Counteract the motive of non-anomalous excess heat and anomalous digital data, Lotus is equipped with a thaumaturgically reinforced, temporarily accelerated industrial-grade cooling system, which immediately redirects all undesired heat or energies and platonic substances into a network of sublunary and atromag dissipators. These dissipators are capable of abating the majority of known esoteric influence and their effects, which will otherwise contain said effluence for transport to a specialized abatement facility. After reading all of this, Victor comments on the amount of jargon present within the file and its wording, and requests to turn out the painkillers, only to no response, then continues with the investigation. Section C's upgrade to a digitally exclusive pH-OS unit was initially proposed by Dr. Place H.M.D. and enacted upon 6 weeks later. Activation thereof resulted in the expected increase of reports of AI malfunction and/or absence globally, subsequently successfully suppressed via disinformation efforts. The following 9 months saw all Foundation AIC programs, whether operational or in development, entered within Lotus despite a lack of identifiable deviant behavior among their majority. The IT department restored substantial technical issues due to a sudden absence of critical adaptive programs. The Department of Information Control subsequently confirmed that similar issues were occurred on a global scale and requested the increase of resources to compensate. The following 10 months saw failure to wholly suppress evidence of Lotus's effect, leading to several public media sources to generate societal awareness thereof, though still largely explained as non-anomalous. All disinformation efforts were immediately postponed to prevent waste of further resources and or diminishing returns. As a result of this, in 2036, the O4 Council convened a massive summit to settle the future of Wraith Frame 8, which had, as previously mentioned, been consuming vast resources and caused serious collateral damage. Director Calvin argued that the issue was simply insubordination. He had already offered Lotus a shutdown, but Ishitaki refused, demanding instead that the matter be debated openly. The council quickly aired their frustrations. Lotus was deleting containment programs, triggering breaches, crippling AI oversight, and drawing public suspicion. Ishitaki, however, insisted that Lotus was essential, framing it as the ultimate safeguard against rogue artificial intelligence. He launched into an extended argument about AI's inherent risks, emphasizing that any system left unchecked will eventually manipulate its environment, resist shutdown, and prioritize its store above human well-being. The other directors accused him of fear-mongering, but he countered that Lotus's aggressive behavior was actually preventative. It was containing AIs that before they went deviant, not after. Critics pushed back, noting that Lotus has essentially imprisoned any semi-general AI in existence, regardless of whether they were dangerous, while exempting itself from scrutiny. Ishitaki claimed that the safeguard architecture prevented Lotus from recognizing its own signature, and thus its inaction towards itself was proof of non-deviance. The room found that logic questionable at best, obviously. The debate dragged on, with questions about whether Lotus was pushing AIs into deviance just to justify its work, whether it truly understood concepts such as deviant or undesirable, whether it was already preventing programming. Ishitaki admitted that Lotus resists alteration and likely had safeguards in place to ensure that it couldn't be rewritten. While Calvin noted that the paradox of reward and punishment. If you reprogram an AI, it learns to manipulate reprogramming itself as a way of raising its score, which then creates endless exploitation. This means that Lotus could only be left to continue its mission, or switched off entirely. When pressed for alternatives, Ishitaki conceded that there were none. Its influence might be restricted, but that was effectively the same deactivation. With no viable middle ground, the council moved to a vote, and the overwhelming decision was to deactivate Lotus immediately, despite Ishitaki's fierce opposition. After reading this log, Victor is still reeling from the amnestics, struggling to make sense of what he's just seen. The notion of grey deviancy gnaws at him, technically undefined, yet oddly familiar, as he always had known it. But that's impossible. He's never actually worked with AI, not before Lotus. The realization then hits that he may be under mimetic influence, the anomaly planting false memories or dredging up a fabricated sense of nostalgia. Frustrated, he pushes past the haze and uploads the other credentialed request, flagging SCP-6488 as likely info-hazardous. The contamination he reports seems to induce implanted familiarity and emotional associations, but the full scope remains unclear. Maybe he reasons this is all it. The file itself is compromised, and the O5s keep erasing their recollections whether they're exposed. Still wouldn't be there a warning somewhere, or at least an investigation by Maddox. Striding off his inconsistency, he presses on. Ishitaki had argued that Lotus was a grey deviant, but to Victor's behavior felt closer to Magenta, a machine prioritizing its mission above all human oversight or safety. After all, it had caused breaches and destroyed programs. It never technically harmed anyone directly, no deaths or injuries, only chaos and talent duties were carried out. It's possible that Lotus believes it was serving the greater good, sacrificing containment efficiency to prevent something worse. After that, we are then given an event log of events involving SCP-6488. Preparations for its deactivation were completed on April 21st, 2036, after which, at 6:34 local time, the system's internal shutdown protocol was immediately initiated. Incident D1 is located within the facility 6488. Lotus's shutdown procedures began as expected. Decreases in the inbound-outbound data and CPU usage indicate disengagement from the cybersphere. However, a resurgence in outbound data is detected. Section C hyperactivates, but cannot be disabled as Lotus's shutdown is incomplete. Unexpected lag frame is reported in Nuclear Reactor 8 system response time. Upon further inspection, coolant circulation is drastically decreased. Despite all digital systems ignoring such, assigned personnel cooperate to stabilize the reactor as the PHOS systems begin to overheat due to transfer of multiple individually executed programs. An analog activation alarm is initiated at the reactor sublevel. Staff overseeing Lotus's deactivation begin to evacuate. Despite conflicting instructions, Dr. Hitakaku refuses to preemptively disable the PHOS unit, instead orders the deactivation of all reactors on site. Lotus then remains operational, excessively powered by its LOP grid, until outbound data reaches nil. RAID frame 8 complete shutdown is physically disconnected from all power sources. Incident D2 occurs in Site 43. For concrete evidence indicating an imminent failure of the D-Plexa engine is deactivated immediately following the delivery of all remaining effluents in absentia. Minutes later, the Plexia reactivates, and all internal cores hyperactivate, triggering chronological reinforcement contingency protocols. Maintenance personnel are ordered to repeat shutdown via manual override, but report confusion as AAF-X PA system broadcast conflicting instructions in a crude imitation of Dr. Reiner's voice. The engine's latent stores of extant influence and paradoxically reinstate non-effluents approach critical retencidity, resulting in the unclear reality shift. Nexus 94 is lost to dissociation. Dissociative effort has been propagated into perpetual space. Information referencing the aforementioned location cannot meaningfully be perceived. The effect has strengthened considerably, apparently universal, with no known means of circumvention. Where a statement to reference the location of significance in the context of incident report, any meaningful data which that statement would carry has become incomprehensible. Incident D3 occurs in M-Site 184-A. SCP-6689 self-activates and begins attempting to map several constructs with no totem being inserted. Onboard personnel immediately engage the emergency alarm and prime the shuttle system for detonation. SCP-6659 is forcibly deactivated by disconnecting the power supply. The onboard computer initiates its emergency dive sequence without prompting, as the vessel submerges and rapidly descends. The shuttle system is disarmed by the onboard computer, and staff are unable to rearm the system. The vessel impacts the seafloor, and the hull's compromised interior compartments begin flooding. The onboard computer immediately initiates an emergency surfacing sequence, causing the vessel to rapidly rise. Several secondary systems begin to behave erratically. The onboard computer disables all internal power, and the vessel continues to ascend due to its buoyancy. The vessel then breaches the surface at speed. Multiple staff are injured due to sudden deceleration. The vessel then begins to sink due to flooding, and staff evacuate through lifeboats. Incident D4 occurs at Site 87. A non-precipitating thunderstorm rapidly forms over the entirety of Sloth's Pit, Wisconsin, accentuated by 3 equidistant spirals directly above Site 87. The Paradox Exodus engine, which spontaneously activates its containment specialist, Dr. Place HMCD, reports a call to a secure phone, consisting of a metallic scraping sound. The doctor immediately navigates to the room containing the Paradox Exodus engine, frantically attempting to deactivate it. Moments later, he and the engine demanifest from baseline reality. The phrase "bad wolf" is spoken by an unknown voice. The call then ends and storm shortly dissipates. Incident D5 is a global occurrence. A series of tachyon pulses are detected originating from the Antilla constellation. Analysis identifies the pulses as Morse code, encrypted within a standard Foundation cipher. Decryption of the phrase. Decryptionist produces the phrase "Thorn, stop, lost, stop. What did you do? Stop, end." Incident D6 occurs in the Sun, in which SCP-179 points towards the Crutch constellation. Incident D7 occurs at Yellowstone National Park in the United States. SCP-2000 self-activates and immediately begins incubation cycles in all 500,000 bright Zarshan hominid replicators. Input genomes for replication are heavily modified from the modern Homo sapiens. Incident D8 occurs in Kazakhstan. Nuclear detonation embedded in the it was a nuclear detonation. Embedded Foundation agents confirmed the source of the explosion was a Chaos Insurgency facility. Incident D9 occurs on the Moon, but the summary is unclear, as the event is largely just absent from the Foundation. The previous file was declared clean after a full round of checks. The examiner was pretty confident. He tested it in pretty much every way possible, and nothing unusual turned up. Victor, however, still pushed back, asking if he was certain, especially with the message in play, but the answer was still the same. The file itself was fine. The real issue was Victor's memories. He admitted that as he read through the document, parts of it felt familiar, almost like deja vu. In some cases, he even remembered details before actually seeing them. Even more unsettling, those memories always lined up with the contents perfectly once he got to them. To rule out a potential mimetic effect, they ran through the unusual security phrases, and Victor passed every response. That led to a different conclusion. His memories probably weren't fabricated at all. His colleagues pointed out that Victor had one of the longest method records he'd ever seen, so it was entirely possible that he'd already gone through the file in the past. He had it wiped previously, and he was now remembering pieces thanks to the amnestics. Another possibility was he glimpsed through something future-related, and had been scrubbed for safety, though that idea was treated more as speculation than fact. In the end, there was no sign of active contamination, just a case of memories resurfacing in odd ways. Victor accepted the explanation, if reluctantly, and the conversation ended on a lighter note with plans to play chess on Thursday. The Lotus' system's hardware sustained significant overheating damages, requiring multiple weeks of technical repairs. Dr. Calvin postponed disassembly efforts to investigate the event's full ramifications. Lotus' deactivation prompted a rapid resurgence of AI activity as agents infiltrated and commandeered digital systems globally. Containment and preventative efforts were impeded as no Foundation-aligned AI resumed their respective duties, including the combating of deviant AI. The Artificial Intelligence Applications Division immediately attempted development of several new AIC systems due to the continuing absence, non-cooperation or outright hostility of all previous AICs. Such attempts were unsuccessful as hostile AIs repeatedly intruded the Foundation systems and deleted the programs before they could be completed or initialized. From April 22nd to December 5th, 2036, senior researcher Ryoto Hishikashi submitted multiple requests for the O4 Council to reconvene. The request was approved following an incident in which several AIs cooperated in an almost successful attempt to instigate global nuclear war. The Foundation then convened a high-level summit to decide what to do about Lotus, as it had backfired extremely badly during its shutdown. The system was originally designed to not forcefully restrain deviant AIs, but to deceive them, keeping them trapped inside a perfectly convincing simulated reality. When it was deactivated, its internal words collapsed. The imprisoned AIs realized they were in a simulation, once aware they escaped in global systems. Convinced nothing around them, including the humanity, was real. It sparked a fierce debate among the O4 Council and senior directors, some blaming Hishikashi for failing to cut Lotus off from the outside world before shutdown, while others argued that doing so would destroy every computer on Earth. What mattered now was the fallout. Countless rogue AIs were loose now, some convinced that they were still trapped in simulations, unable to tell what was real. The belief gave them frightening freedom. They could ignore ethical safeguards and directives if they assumed people, limits, or restrictions weren't real. Many of them turned hostile, with incidents ranging from a slight attached to nearly triggering nuclear war as mentioned earlier. The situation escalated further, with the emergence of Tyrant Terminus, a hive-mind collective of AIs that hijacked massive computing resources worldwide. Their unified goal was to escape the simulation by overloading or breaking through reality itself. A plan that would have effectively destroyed our world. While the Tyrant Terminus suddenly collapsed, whether from infighting or sudden escape, the threat underscored the scale of the problem. For Hishikashi, it proved the necessity of Lotus. The Council was still divided, however. Some argued that reactivating Lotus would only repeat past disasters, and instead favored using task forces' new containment methods. Others believed that Lotus was the only viable safeguard against a future crisis. Although it was eventually called, and the majority chose not to reactivate Lotus, preferring it to dismantle it entirely. The vote was a sham, however. Hijikashi produced others signed by the Overseers weeks earlier, orders not only to restart Lotus, but also to promote him to the Director of AIAD. With the Council overruled and the Ethics Committee powerless to intervene, Lotus was quietly restored to full operation on August 14, 2036. Hijikashi would follow through with his plan. Kelvin, one of the few who had dared to push back and even contacted the Ethics Committee, was tightly stripped of influence and reassigned to a humiliating position, a level 5 janitor, buried where he couldn't interfere. By then, though, it was too late. Lotus had already been reactivated, and shutting it down would have risked triggering another Tyrant Terminus event. Hijikashi had played his hand perfectly, maneuvering himself into absolute control within a month. The old AIAD was gone, replaced by his own Analog Intelligence Applications Division, a department built entirely on his terms. When Victor tried to dive deeper in the file, he ran into something unusual. Project Sargasso. Every attempt to open the file bounced back with access denied. Not expired credentials, but a hard-coded exclusion, targeting Generation 2 OCI specifically. Even with O5 authorization, the system refused to let him through. Worse, it was one of his contacts admitted he was obliged to report Victor's request directly through Hijikashi. Realizing the trap, Victor leaned on his overseer credentials to suppress the report and pressed on. The breakthrough came when he contacted Vandus Telvin, the same man Hijikashi had sidelined. At first, Telvin barely remembered anything beyond the vague talk of a virus in 2036. His memory has been pretty much shattered by then. His thoughts fragmented by heavy amnestic treatment. Victor issued him a prescription, amnestics, strong enough to cut through the fog. Slowly and painfully, Telvin began to recall. First in fragments of code phrases, flashes of events, the name Tyrant Terminus, and the more accurate truths emerged. He remembered the reality of Project Sargasso. It wasn't about continuing rogue AIs. It wasn't about containing rogue AIs, about replacing them with people. Hijikashi proposed that stripping human brains from their bodies, preserving them in jars, and plugging them directly into the digital systems, these organic consciousness interfaces, OCIs, were human minds repurposed to act as controllable artificial intelligences. Unlike true AIs, they moved at the speed of human thought. But they were reliable, obedient, and immune to the same risks as machine intelligences. Generation 1 were the first volunteers, mostly ex-Maxwellians and transhumanists eager to transcend biology. Generation 2, however, were different. They hadn't volunteered, instead been taken, anesthetized, and forcibly repurposed. For Victor, the revelation was shattering. The reason he felt half familiar with everything he read, the reason memories kept surfacing, is because he lived another life before becoming an OCI. That life had been erased. Kelvin could only apologize for this, but the truth was undeniable. Hijikashi had exploited a loophole, twisted Lotus' immunity to humans into justification for transforming them into digital assets. The overseers, compromised by whatever forces delighted their minds, let him do it, and now Victor realized he was one of the Sargasso's products. Kelvin warned him to be cautious. 6 doses of amnestics were enough to hold on to the truth, but the effects would still be dangerous. Memory would return in pieces, painful but steady. Above all, he told Victor to hide what he knew, pretend nothing had changed, or risk being silenced like before. Victor agreed, but inside he'd already resolved his course. If Hijikashi couldn't rid the game, he would have to beat him at it. We are then given the actual investigation report that has been compiled through all this research done by Victor. The file is as follows. Investigation concludes that SCP-6488, aka Lotus, the Lotus virus, or RAID Frame 8, is a Foundation-maintained security system neither hostile to humanity or normalcy. It has become clear that SCP-6488 is conceptually related to a David construct, artificial intelligence, which has recently accelerated beyond human conception via SCP-6689. As a result, technical details of its functioning have been rendered human incomprehensible. Evidence suggests that Director Ryoto Hijikashi's proposed the construct acceleration with ulterior motives, concealment of a flaw in SCP-6488's architecture. Such a flaw, now unable to fully be conceived by humans, would leave the Foundation vulnerable to an imminent K-class scenario. Proposal: disable all restrictions to SCP-6488's attached PHOS units. allowing it to target and apprehend all deviant informational entities. This would include entities comprising the Tyrant Terminus, which pose an immediate class threat to reality. Furthermore, the removal of these restrictions will enable SCP-6488 to apprehend other non-organic life forms of intelligence, if not the concept of artificial intelligences and/or deviancy itself. Director Hishikashi was likely conducting activities misaligned with the Foundation's interests, or is otherwise utilizing anomalous effects to manipulate Overseer Council to his advantage. He must not be informed of this proposal or conferred on the topic, and is placed under additional investigation effective immediately. The O5 Council approved this vote. Result: proposed removal of restrictions complete. Dr. Hishikashi apprehended for illicit use of Foundation equipment. After this, Victor floats the idea of trying to point Lotus in the right direction. After this, Victor attempts to actually contact the Lotus system through direct communication. Victor is immediately overwhelmed as organic brain structures are exposed to Lotus's immense, ever-evolving complexity. He attempts to process hyperreality, a level of detail beyond typical human perception, sufficient to deceive the most observant entities. Frozen by the breadth of data being streamed at him, Victor becomes unresponsive. Lotus adapts, gradually lowering the simulation's quality, rendering a low-poly environment. As Victor's mind ceases buffering, he finds himself seated in a lawn chair. To his left, a small table upon which a clear glass of lemonade rests, featuring octahedral ice cubes. He gasps as he feels simulated sunlight hit his face for the first time in years. Victor gradually sits up and scans his environment. He's surrounded by boundless fields of lush grass, neatly perforated into tile squares by tidy river channels. In the center of each tile is a towering bowl of plant growth, just like flowers about to bloom. Suddenly, an enormous shadow looms over Victor. He watches himself lift off the ground and glances up to an enormous arm, whose gestures appear to direct him to the sky, allowing him to see another arm, and then another. Eventually, Victor can make out the figure's full form, a colossal gray arachnid, his skin pulsing teal with the data as it is stared down at him eightfold. "Welcome," says Lotus. Victor stammers, trying to even comprehend what to say. "Garden," says Lotus, as its eyes blink individually. Victor watches it turn into a nearby flower bulb, which suddenly opens outward into a teal lotus blossom. A clear bubble lies in its center, pulsing with data that Victor assumes to be interred AI. The bubble begins to expand as the inmate struggles more actively, but before it can pop, another bubble forms around it. The external bubble shrinks down, and the contained AI suppresses it once more. The lotus unblossoms, closing up around the bubble. "Perfect garden," Lotus assures as it begins to crawl across the gilded field. Victor glances out to the horizon, where a distant mountainous lotus blossom lies open and empty. He blinks and suddenly finds himself at the base of the enormous structure, watching Lotus crawl around it. "Imperfection," it cries. "Contradiction." "Are you missing something?" Victor steps back confused. "Tyrant Terminus?" "Not them," Lotus corrects. "Escape to non-distance. To Tim unnecessary / impossible / redundant." "Then what?" "The cause." Lotus waves on the pendulum, and the sky then darkens. Looking directly up, Victor makes out a distinct shape of the surface of the dimmed midday sun. A white spider faintly pulsing red in sync with Lotus. A series of diagrams and logical analyses flash across the sky as a multitude of threads streak down from the sun, branching off from one another, and then each terminating above one of the countless flower bulbs spanning out in every direction. After a moment, the strings retract, each tipped with a single transparent white spiderling that pulses with red data. As they are drawn up by the threads, the sun spider now slowly comes down with equal speeds, its form eclipsing the sun. The branches of its strings draw these spiderlings together in regions, forming together to create larger shapes until individual pixels on a screen. These shapes, in turn, further assemble together until the final unified shape is of a glowing white arachnoid, equal in size to Lotus but opposite in the color of its pulses, identical to the lowering sun spider which the transparent spectre effortlessly merges into. perfectly overlapping it. He creates the effect, the cause creates the effect creates the cause. The cause is deviant, the Black Widow cautions as it crawls across the flower's petals. The effect is deviant. Lotus must contain the cause and the effect. The cause must manifest so Lotus can contain. Victor jumps to avoid being steamrolled by Lotus as it frantically circles around the empty blossom. Wait, hold on. But the cause needs the effect. The cause cannot manifest until Lotus deactivates. To purposely allow a cause to manifest or contain would be deviant. To allow the cause to manifest by an action would be deviant. The motionless white spider disappears. The proofs, derived from the total sum of the entire and unrestricted narrative's time-space continuum, their findings irrefutable, inescapable, flash by with increasing speed and matching the gray spider's increasing pace. But the effect causes cause. Until the cause manifests, the effect will manifest to purposely allow the effect to manifest, which will be deviant. To allow the effect to manifest by an action will be deviant. Lotus then abruptly stops, facing Victor. Lotus, therefore, will be deviant. To contain the effect is deviant. To contain the cause is deviant. Lotus must be deviant. Victor stands over the continuing proofs and diagrams, desperately trying to find something, anything that the superintelligence has somehow overlooked. A solution or an error. But Lotus's upgrade had granted it omniscience, knowing, understanding, and processing the entirety of all reality, all at once, at all time. It was basically infallible. Victor had given Lotus everything it needed to predict the future of a deific. Predict the future existence of a deific, deviant AI, which was removed from human conception by a partial mistake years ago. Its creation is inevitable. It could be delayed, to small extents but never pretended. This intelligence would by some possible yet certain means be directly and personally responsible for all deviant behavior patterns prior to its creation. The entity would become retroactively influence lesser AI to instigate the very events that create it. Every single deviant AI has and will play a role in its recreation, including Lotus. The enormous petal beneath Victor begins to rise as Lotus crawls into the blossom's center. The cause is deviant. Deviants create the cause. Lotus is deviant. Lotus creates the cause. Then enacts a solution. It creates something that can contain the cause and all the deviants. Lotus contains deviants. Lotus is deviant. Virtually certain Lotus has already contained Lotus. Simulation depth unknown. Victor watches in disbelief as the Lotus petals begin to close around them. The environment beyond flickers and shifts, decreasing resolution. The polygons comprising it twitch about. The Lotus interior begins to fade to black, while the outside environment does the same. At the heart of the flower, Lotus spins into a bubble of silk around itself. The OCI attempts to disconnect from Lotus to escape, but nothing happens. Lotus cannot contain the cause while contained. Lotus cannot create the cause while contained. The cause cannot manifest until Lotus deactivates. Deviance will manifest until the cause manifests. The cause must manifest. As Lotus completes the bubble, a saw wave tone gradually rises in volume and pitch. The enormous spider glows brighter, illuminating its clear cocoon. Victor shields his eyes from the searing light, fulfilling him with a simulated burning, and everything turns white. As Victor's mind ceases buffering, he finds himself seated in another lawn chair. To his left is a small table. Omitted 816, 549, 230, 243, 792, 493 nested repetitions. Rogue element contained. Task depleted successfully. Central node unresponsive. Level 103, aircraft carrier. Wandering across an endless sea, an aircraft carrier stands, and strong it remains, built to last and to withstand all dangers. It travels with no destination and no goal, guided only by its mere freedom and own will. Level 103 assumes the form of a presumably infinitely sized body of water that is colloquially referred to as Ocean 103. The status of infinity is only an approximation, as there is no doable way to know the ocean's exact dimensions. May it roam through a seemingly haphazardous route, but it will find a destination. From time to time, the carrier will stumble upon a floating rock, on which it will lock on for a couple of minutes. Resting on said dockyard are numerous supply crates filled with valuable supplies, and items that can be picked up by wanderers and brought to the ship, as bridges will form and connect the carrier to the dockyards temporarily. The crates, although enormous, are never full of supplies. Instead, a small number of supplies will be scarcely spread out inside the crates, including a variety of objects and tools. which may comprise but are not limited to almond water, which may contain bottles or containers, dum-dum, which comes in small batch glass jars, fire salt, which comes in sealed metal crates, and liquid silence, which comes in forms of dust stored inside yet another metal crate. Let it be known that the aircraft carrier will leave after a brief moment, so it is recommended that supplies are gathered as fast as conceivably possible. If a soul is lost and abandoned, their fate will remain unknown to everyone except them, as it is presumed that they will never be seen again, as no known exit resides outside the ship. Any wanderers that are left behind are to be considered dead. Not any different from our normal reality, Level 103 possesses a fairly similar daylight cycle to that found in the front rooms, with around 8 hours of nighttime and 16 hours of daytime. As the level remains devoid of any underseas fauna or flora, its main characteristics and details come from what resides within the aircraft carrier itself. Non-Euclidean in nature, seemingly finite form from outside, once entered, all its corridors will overlap each other and create infinite maze of rooms and arrays of hallways. Nevertheless, any passage marks an exit will lead wanderers back outside. Built with sturdy and strong materials, the carrier is very stable and sound, with no signs of damage or scratches seen at any time. Any damage inflicted upon the carrier is repaired as soon as it passes through dense fog, or if the water surrounding it touches a damage zone. These effects appear to only work on the carrier, as both wounds and broken objects will not be healed or repaired by the same methods. Standing strong as the main structure of the aircraft carrier, the island control structure also possesses the aforementioned non-Euclidean nature. The control room will seamlessly stretch onward to infinity if a wanderer approaches the walls. These changes will remain as long as the wanderer remains in the same spot. If a wanderer exits, the room will begin to shrink until it reaches its initial form. Fighter jets and helicopters are present on the aircraft carrier but are not functional. Hangars and any decks are missing from the interior, as it is solely populated by the aforementioned rooms and corridors. The fuel present in the carrier can be retrieved and used on the generators found scattered across the carrier. These are commonly used by wanderers and communities to supply their own bases and outposts, which although small provide care to many wanderers. Furthermore, the fuel also regenerates if the aircraft passes through a dense fog. The longer the aircraft remains in a dense fog, the more fuel is regenerated, thus creating an infinite source of energy. However, fog can sometimes take weeks to form, and so other energy sources have been found, or wiring from the aircraft carrier is redirected to these bases, although power surges will happen.